Ladies and gentlemen, we gather at a moment when destiny whispers before it speaks aloud, when the soul feels a tug it cannot name, and the heart senses a truth it has not yet dared to claim. There are seasons when God does not shout. He nudges, aligns, rearranges the quiet details of our lives until one presence begins to glow brighter than the rest. Tonight is about discernment, about courage, about the sacred timing that turns coincidence into calling. It is about listening past fear, beyond habit, and into the brave music of divine intention. For when God wants you to be with a person, He does not merely send a sign. He prepares your spirit to recognize the shock of recognition. Divine alignment reveals itself before it explains itself, and this truth often unsettles the human need for clarity, labels, and guarantees. We are taught to demand reasons before we surrender, to require evidence before we believe, to insist on logic before we trust. Yet alignment does not knock with answers in its hands. It arrives quietly, sometimes inconveniently, often unannounced, and it stirs something ancient inside the soul. You may not understand why a certain person enters your life at a precise moment, but you feel the shift immediately. Your breath changes. Your spirit straightens its back. Something within you says, pay attention, even when the mind says, this makes no sense. Alignment does not wait for your permission to be felt. It announces itself through resonance, not explanation. Many people miss divine alignment because they are listening for thunder instead of truth. They expect fireworks, dramatic signs, or unmistakable declarations from the heavens. But God often moves with subtle authority. He aligns paths through timing, through repetition, through a strange sense of familiarity that feels older than memory. You meet someone and there is no obvious reason why they matter so deeply, yet your spirit recognizes them before your logic catches up. Alignment does not come with a manual. It comes with an inner knowing that refuses to be silenced. You find yourself thinking of them without effort, praying without intention, adjusting your choices without realizing why. This is how alignment begins, not with explanation, but with recognition. Before explanation, there is disturbance. Alignment disrupts routines, challenges expectations, and questions the stories you have told yourself about what you deserve and what is possible. You may feel unsettled, even resistant, because divine alignment rarely confirms comfort zones. It asks you to grow before it tells you where you are going. It stretches you emotionally, spiritually, sometimes painfully, because alignment is not about ease, it is about purpose. God aligns people not to entertain you, but to evolve you. The discomfort you feel is often the sound of old limitations breaking under the weight of a new assignment. Divine alignment often feels like standing in a doorway without knowing what room you are entering. You sense that something is changing, but you cannot yet name what it is. You may question your sanity, wondering why this person affects you so deeply, why their presence awakens courage you did not know you had or exposes fears you thought were buried. Alignment has a way of illuminating both light and shadow. It shows you who you are becoming by revealing what must be healed. This is why alignment is rarely comfortable at first. It confronts you with the parts of yourself that are not ready for the destiny being offered. God reveals alignment through patterns, not proclamations. Conversations repeat themselves in different forms. Circumstances keep bringing you back to the same connection. Distance does not dissolve the pull. Silence does not erase the awareness. Even when you try to move on, something gently redirects you back to the same truth. This is not obsession, and it is not coincidence. It is alignment insisting on being acknowledged. Explanation will come later, but recognition arrives first. Persistent and patient, waiting for you to trust what you feel before you understand why you feel it. There are moments when alignment reveals itself through peace that defies logic. You may be walking through chaos, uncertainty, or emotional storms, yet when you think of this person, there is calm. Not excitement, not fantasy, but a grounded stillness that feels like home. Divine alignment does not always ignite fireworks. Sometimes it lights a steady flame. It anchors you instead of distracting you. It does not pull you away from God. It pulls you closer. You pray differently. You listen more carefully. You become more honest with yourself. Alignment refines your character even before it reshapes your future. Explanation belongs to the mind, but alignment speaks first to the spirit. This is why you cannot explain it to others, and sometimes you cannot even explain it to yourself. Words fall short. Logic feels inadequate. You simply know. And knowing without explanation can feel terrifying in a world that values proof over perception. But faith has never required full understanding. Faith begins where explanation ends. Divine alignment asks you to trust the whisper before the confirmation, to follow the nudge before the map, to honor the calling before the clarity. Many people delay obedience because they are waiting for explanation. They want guarantees, timelines, and outcomes. But alignment is not a contract, it is a calling. God does not always reveal the destination at the beginning of the journey. He reveals the next step. And often that step is simply acknowledgement. Acknowledging that this connection is different, acknowledging that your heart is being shaped in unfamiliar ways, acknowledging that something sacred may be unfolding beneath the surface of ordinary interactions. Alignment reveals itself through growth. You begin to outgrow old patterns, old relationships, old fears, things that once satisfied you no longer fit. Conversations that once excited you now feel empty. Alignment raises your standards without announcing the upgrade. You start to crave depth, truth, and purpose. You become less willing to settle, less patient with confusion, less tolerant of dishonesty. This internal shift is not accidental, it is preparation. God does not align you with purpose without first aligning you within yourself. Sometimes alignment reveals itself through resistance. You may try to avoid the connection, dismiss it, rationalize it away. You tell yourself it is inconvenient, impractical, or impossible. Yet the more you resist, the stronger the awareness becomes. Not because God forces alignment, but because truth does not disappear when ignored. Resistance often indicates significance. The very reasons you use to disqualify the connection may be the reasons it exists. Alignment challenges the narratives you have built to protect yourself from disappointment. It invites you to rewrite those stories with faith instead of fear. Divine alignment also reveals itself through timing that cannot be manufactured. You meet this person not when life is perfect, but when growth is necessary. When lessons have been learned, but humility remains. When wounds are healing, but openness is required. Alignment does not wait for perfection, it waits for readiness. And readiness is not about having everything together, it is about being willing to be transformed. God aligns people when they are capable of growth, not when they are free from flaws. Before explanation, alignment reveals purpose. You begin to sense that this connection is not just about companionship, but about calling. Conversations go deeper than surface level exchange. There is encouragement toward purpose, not distraction from it. You feel challenged to become more, not pressured to be less. Alignment does not diminish your light, it amplifies it. It does not demand that you abandon who you are, it invites you to become who you were meant to be. This is how you know the difference between alignment and attachment. Attachment clings, alignment equips. There is also a spiritual familiarity in divine alignment, a sense that your souls speak the same language even when your lives look different. Values resonate. Integrity matters. Truth feels safe. Even disagreements carry respect. Alignment does not mean absence of conflict. It means presence of honor. You feel seen without being exposed, understood without being explained. This depth is not created overnight, nor is it easily replicated. It is revealed gradually, like a photograph developing in darkroom silence. God often reveals alignment by removing distractions. Other options fade. Other voices lose influence. What once seemed important no longer competes for your attention. This narrowing of focus is not loss. It is refinement. Alignment simplifies what distraction complicates. It brings clarity not by adding more choices, but by highlighting what truly matters. When alignment is present, confusion decreases, even if questions remain. You may not know where this is going, but you know what it is not. Divine alignment also tests patience. Explanation may take time, sometimes years. You may walk seasons of uncertainty, distance, or delay, but alignment does not expire because explanation is postponed. What is aligned by God is not undone by time. Waiting is not punishment, it is preparation. In the waiting, character is strengthened, faith is deepened, and motives are purified. Alignment that survives silence is alignment rooted in purpose, not impulse. You will know alignment by its fruit long before you understand its form. Peace, growth, conviction, and clarity will begin to emerge. You become more honest, more compassionate, more courageous. Your prayers change from asking for signs to asking for strength. You stop asking God to remove the calling and start asking Him to prepare you for it. This internal shift is alignment revealing itself, shaping you before shaping the outcome. Divine alignment does not need your understanding to operate, but it does require your trust to unfold. Trust is the bridge between recognition and explanation. Without trust, alignment remains acknowledged but unfulfilled. God does not force alignment into manifestation. He invites partnership. He waits for your yes, even when that yes is whispered through uncertainty. Explanation will come, but it follows obedience, not the other way around. When alignment reveals itself, it often feels like remembering something you never consciously knew. A sense of destiny, not in a dramatic sense, but in a grounded, quiet assurance. You are not being swept away, you are being called forward. Alignment does not rush you, it anchors you. It asks you to walk deliberately, prayerfully, courageously, trusting that clarity will meet you along the way. Divine alignment reveals itself before it explains itself, because faith is formed in the space between knowing and understanding. It is in that space that courage is born, that obedience is tested, that purpose takes root. Those who wait only for explanation may never experience alignment in its fullness. But those who honor recognition, who trust the nudge, who listen to the quiet authority of the soul, step into something greater than logic can offer. They step into purpose unfolding in real time, guided not by certainty, but by truth that does not need permission to be real. Recognition is louder than attraction, because attraction speaks to the senses, while recognition speaks to the soul. And the soul never whispers without purpose. Attraction can be explained, categorized, justified, and often dismissed as chemistry, timing, or desire. Recognition arrives without asking permission and does not require approval from logic. It moves past preference and settles into certainty. You may be attracted to many people in your lifetime, drawn by beauty, charm, intelligence, or familiarity, but recognition happens rarely, and when it does, it rearranges the internal landscape. It is not loud in the way fireworks are loud. It is loud in the way truth echoes long after the room goes silent. Attraction excites the body, but recognition awakens memory that does not belong to time. You look at a person and something inside you says, there you are, not as discovery, but as remembrance. There is no rush, no need to impress, no urgency to perform. The soul relaxes because it feels understood without introduction. Recognition does not ask, do I like this person? It asks, why does this person feel familiar in a way I cannot explain? Attraction wants to possess. Recognition wants to honor. Attraction consumes attention. Recognition commands reverence. Many people confuse attraction for alignment because attraction is immediate and dramatic. It makes the heart race and the mind wander. Recognition, on the other hand, grounds you. It steadies your breath. It slows you down instead of speeding you up. You do not feel the need to chase or convince. You feel present. You feel aware. Recognition does not demand your energy, it centers it. Where attraction pulls you outward, recognition draws you inward. It brings you back to yourself. Recognition is louder because it persists when attraction fades. Attraction can disappear with distance, silence, or disappointment. Recognition remains even when circumstances change. Even when the person is not present, the knowing remains intact. You do not obsess, you acknowledge. You do not fantasize, you reflect. Recognition does not distort reality, it clarifies it. You see the person clearly, flaws included, and still feel the resonance. Attraction ignores flaws. Recognition integrates them. The body reacts to attraction, but the spirit responds to recognition. Your spirit knows when something aligns with purpose. It does not panic or rush, it listens. You may not feel overwhelmed, but you feel anchored. Conversations with this person feel different, not louder, not flirtatious, not dramatic, but meaningful. Words carry weight. Silence carries comfort. You are not performing a version of yourself. You are being witnessed as you are. Recognition does not require effort to maintain connection. Attraction often thrives on imagination, on what could be, on projection. Recognition is rooted in presence, in what is. You are not imagining a future. You are acknowledging a truth. You are not building castles in the air. You are standing on solid ground. Recognition does not distract you from your life. It integrates into it. It does not pull you away from responsibility. It strengthens your sense of it. You become more disciplined, more focused, more intentional. Recognition speaks through calm conviction. It does not argue with your mind. It waits for your mind to catch up. You may try to label it as attraction, because that feels safer, more familiar, more manageable. But attraction is noisy and inconsistent, while recognition is steady and unwavering. It does not fluctuate based on mood or circumstance. It remains present even when challenged. This steadiness is its volume. When recognition is present, comparison fades. You are no longer measuring this connection against others. You are no longer asking if there is something better or easier. The internal search quiets, not because you have settled, but because you arrived at something that feels complete in itself. Recognition does not eliminate desire, it refines it. It transforms wanting into honoring. You want the best for this person, not possession of them. Recognition often arrives without physical emphasis. It may not begin with attraction at all. Sometimes attraction follows recognition, not the other way around. You notice the person's character before their appearance, their integrity before their charm, their presence before their performance. You feel drawn to their values, their depth, their stillness. Attraction shouts, "Look at me." Recognition whispers, "Listen to me." And that whisper carries further than any shout. There is a spiritual intelligence in recognition. It senses compatibility beyond preference. It notices how this person affects your prayer life, your self-awareness, your emotional honesty. You become more truthful in their presence, not because they demand it, but because it feels safe. Recognition creates safety without stagnation. You are challenged to grow, but not pressured to change who you are. Attraction often asks you to adjust yourself to be chosen. Recognition affirms you as you are while inviting evolution. Recognition does not create anxiety about loss. Attraction fears disappearance. Recognition trusts continuity. Even when distance exists, recognition does not panic. It does not cling. It understands timing without needing control. This trust is not passive, it is grounded. You are not waiting helplessly. You are living fully while knowing something meaningful exists. Recognition allows you to function independently while remaining connected internally. When recognition is louder than attraction, discernment becomes easier. You are less likely to confuse excitement with purpose. You are less tempted by intensity without substance. You begin to value consistency over charm, depth over display, truth over thrill. Recognition teaches patience because it does not demand immediate gratification. It respects process. It understands that what is aligned does not need to be rushed. Recognition also brings responsibility. When you recognize someone, you recognize the weight of their presence in your life. You are more careful with words, more mindful of actions. You understand that this connection is not casual. Attraction allows carelessness. Recognition invites stewardship. You protect the connection not through control, but through integrity. You want to show up as your best self, not to impress, but to honor what you have recognized. There is also humility in recognition. It reminds you that not everything meaningful arrives wrapped in fantasy. Some of the most significant connections come quietly, without drama, without spectacle. Recognition teaches you to value substance over show. It trains your spirit to listen rather than react. It helps you differentiate between what excites you and what grounds you. Recognition can coexist with uncertainty. You may not know how this connection will unfold, but you know it matters. Attraction wants assurance. Recognition accepts mystery. It understands that meaning does not always reveal itself immediately. This acceptance does not weaken commitment, it strengthens faith. You trust that what you recognize will reveal its purpose in time. Recognition also has boundaries. It does not tolerate disrespect, manipulation, or confusion. Attraction often excuses behavior because of desire. Recognition requires alignment of character. If something violates your values, recognition does not stay silent. It speaks through discomfort. It withdraws peace. Recognition protects you from settling for less than what honors your soul. When recognition is present, the connection influences your choices even in absence. You think differently. You speak differently. You hold yourself differently. Not because you are trying to impress, but because you are becoming more aware of who you are. Recognition sharpens self-respect. It raises standards without making demands. It invites you to meet the level of integrity the connection requires. Recognition is louder because it does not fade with familiarity. Attraction often dulls with routine. Recognition deepens. The more you know the person, the more the resonance grows. Layers reveal meaning, not disappointment. Time adds weight, not erosion. Recognition appreciates complexity. It welcomes depth. It does not need constant stimulation to remain alive. Recognition does not compete with God's presence in your life. It complements it. You do not feel pulled away from faith, purpose, or calling. You feel supported in them. Attraction can distract. Recognition aligns. You pray with clarity. You seek wisdom. You become more attentive to guidance. The connection feels covered, not chaotic. Recognition can be quiet but undeniable. Even when you try to ignore it, it returns gently, persistently, not as longing but as awareness. You may move forward with life, pursue goals, build routines, yet the recognition remains like a steady note beneath the melody of your days. It does not interrupt, it accompanies. Recognition is louder than attraction because it speaks in truth, not impulse. It speaks in peace, not urgency. It speaks in alignment, not illusion. It does not need to convince you. It waits for you to listen, and once heard, it cannot be unheard. It shapes perception, informs choices, and redefines connection. Recognition does not shout to be noticed. It resonates until you respond. Obedience requires bravery, not certainty, because certainty belongs to sight while bravery belongs to faith. And faith has never waited for proof to move forward. Obedience begins at the moment you realize that knowing everything is not a prerequisite for doing the right thing. Most people believe they will obey once they feel safe, once they feel confident, once the outcome is guaranteed. But obedience rarely arrives wrapped in reassurance. It arrives as a quiet instruction that asks for courage before comfort, movement before mastery, trust before explanation. God does not ask for your confidence in outcomes. He asks for your courage in response. Bravery is often misunderstood as loud confidence, but spiritual bravery is quiet, steady, and deeply personal. It is the willingness to say yes while your hands are still trembling. It is choosing alignment even when fear presents logical arguments against it. Obedience does not silence fear, it speaks over it. It acknowledges the uncertainty without allowing uncertainty to rule the decision. When God calls you toward a person, a path, or a purpose, He does not remove the risk. He strengthens the resolve. Certainty appeals to the ego because it promises control. Bravery humbles the ego because it admits dependence. Obedience requires you to release the illusion that you can predict, manage, or guarantee the future. It asks you to trust the one who sees beyond your limited horizon. This surrender is not weakness, it is wisdom. Bravery is choosing to move forward knowing you may not understand everything, knowing you may be misunderstood, knowing you may be uncomfortable, yet trusting that obedience itself is the protection. Many people delay obedience because they confuse wisdom with caution. They believe waiting for certainty is prudence, when in reality it is often fear disguised as responsibility. Wisdom listens for instruction, fear waits for assurance. Obedience listens for direction and acts with integrity. Fear asks endless questions to avoid movement. Bravery does not answer every question, it honors the calling. God does not guide those who refuse to move. He guides those who step forward while seeking Him. Obedience becomes especially difficult when it involves people, because people introduce variables you cannot control. Emotions, histories, timing, and expectations all complicate the decision. When God leads you toward a person, He is not promising ease, He is inviting growth. Bravery is required to trust that the connection has purpose even if the process is unclear. Obedience in relationships is not about blind attachment. It is about faithful discernment followed by courageous action. There is a cost to obedience that certainty tries to avoid. Obedience may cost reputation, comfort, familiarity, or approval. It may require you to disappoint others in order to remain aligned with God. Bravery is choosing integrity over applause. Certainty seeks consensus. Obedience stands alone if necessary. The bravest decisions are often made in solitude, where there is no audience to affirm your choice, only conviction to sustain it. Obedience also requires bravery because it exposes vulnerability. When you obey, you admit that you do not have all the answers. You admit that you are trusting guidance beyond yourself. This vulnerability can feel threatening in a world that rewards self-sufficiency. But spiritual maturity recognizes that self-sufficiency is not strength. Dependence on God is. Obedience is not surrendering agency, it is aligning agency with divine wisdom. Certainty often comes after obedience, not before it. Many people want confirmation before commitment, but God often provides confirmation through commitment. When you step forward, clarity begins to form. When you act in faith, understanding follows. Obedience opens doors that certainty keeps locked. Bravery is the key that turns the handle even when you do not know what lies on the other side. There is also bravery in patience. Obedience is not always immediate action. Sometimes it is disciplined waiting. Waiting without certainty requires courage. Remaining faithful without visible progress requires strength. Obedience in waiting means trusting God's timing even when silence feels heavy. It means resisting the urge to force outcomes or seek substitutes. This form of obedience is not passive, it is active trust. Obedience requires bravery because it often contradicts logic. God's instructions do not always align with societal expectations or personal preferences. You may be led toward a person who does not fit your checklist, toward a situation that challenges your comfort, toward a season that demands humility. Bravery is choosing obedience over preference. It is acknowledging that God's wisdom exceeds your criteria. When obedience involves people, bravery is also required to maintain boundaries. Obedience does not mean tolerating disrespect or confusion. It means acting in alignment with truth, even when emotions complicate the decision. Bravery allows you to say no when obedience requires restraint, and yes when obedience requires risk. It is not reckless, it is intentional. It listens deeply before acting boldly. Obedience requires bravery because it invites transformation. When you obey, you cannot remain the same. Old patterns are challenged, comfort zones are disrupted, identity evolves. Certainty prefers stability. Bravery accepts growth. Obedience reshapes character before it reshapes circumstances. It refines patience, humility, courage, and faith. This inner transformation is often the real purpose behind the instruction. Many people fear obedience because they believe it will cost them happiness. In reality, obedience costs illusion. It removes false security, not true joy. Bravery is trusting that God does not lead you away from fulfillment, but toward it, even if the path looks unfamiliar. Obedience aligns you with peace that does not depend on conditions. Obedience also requires bravery because it may require revisiting wounds. God often leads you into situations that heal you, not by avoiding pain, but by redeeming it. This can feel frightening. Bravery is trusting that healing is worth the discomfort of exposure. Obedience allows God to transform what once hurt you into wisdom that strengthens you. There is bravery in obedience when others do not understand your choice. You may not be able to explain why you are moving in a certain direction, why you are waiting, or why you are committed to something unseen. Obedience does not require validation. It requires conviction. Bravery is remaining faithful even when questioned. Certainty seeks agreement. Obedience seeks alignment. Obedience requires bravery because it relinquishes control over outcomes. You can obey perfectly and still face challenges. Obedience is not a guarantee of ease, it is a commitment to faithfulness. Bravery is continuing to trust God even when the results are delayed or different than expected. This trust is not naive, it's resilient. In matters of calling and connection, obedience often means choosing depth over distraction. Bravery is resisting the urge to settle for what is easy instead of what is meaningful. Certainty prefers predictable paths. Obedience follows purposeful ones. It may require you to walk alone for a season, to remain faithful without immediate reward, to hold space for growth rather than rush toward resolution. Obedience requires bravery because it demands honesty. You must be honest with yourself about what God is asking, about what you are avoiding, about what you fear losing. This honesty can be uncomfortable. Bravery is facing truth without distortion. Obedience aligns your actions with that truth. There is also bravery in obedience when it asks you to forgive, to extend grace, or to remain open after disappointment. Certainty protects itself by closing doors. Obedience listens for God's instruction even when the heart feels guarded. Bravery does not deny pain, it refuses to let pain dictate decisions. Obedience requires bravery because it acknowledges that God's plan may unfold slowly. We live in a culture that demands immediacy, but obedience respects process. Bravery is staying faithful through gradual unfolding. It is trusting that God is working even when progress is invisible. Obedience is not about being fearless, it is about being faithful. Bravery is acting despite fear, not in the absence of it. Certainty waits for fear to disappear. Obedience moves while fear is still present. This movement is not impulsive, it is deliberate. It is guided by prayer, reflection, and discernment. When obedience involves stepping toward a person, bravery includes the willingness to be seen, to be known, to risk connection. Certainty avoids vulnerability by demanding guarantees. Obedience accepts vulnerability as part of growth. Bravery understands that meaningful connection requires openness. Obedience also requires bravery to let go. Sometimes God asks you to release what you are holding on to, not because it is bad, but because it is no longer aligned. Letting go without certainty of what comes next requires courage. Bravery trusts that God fills what He empties. In the end, obedience shapes trust. Each act of obedience strengthens faith. Each brave decision builds spiritual resilience. Certainty may bring temporary comfort, but obedience builds lasting confidence in God's faithfulness. Bravery becomes easier as obedience becomes familiar. You learn that God meets you in motion, not in hesitation. Obedience requires bravery, not certainty, because certainty limits faith to what is known, while bravery expands faith into what is possible. It teaches you to trust God's character more than your understanding, to rely on His guidance more than your predictions, to value alignment over assurance. Through obedience, faith becomes lived experience. Courage becomes spiritual language, and trust becomes the foundation upon which purpose continues to unfold. Purpose confirms what emotion cannot, because emotion reacts to the moment while purpose responds to eternity, and the difference between them is revealed over time through consistency, alignment, and fruit. Emotion is powerful, expressive, and immediate. It rises quickly, speaks loudly, and demands attention. Purpose is quieter. It unfolds slowly, often without urgency, and it waits to be recognized rather than announced. When God is involved, He does not ask emotion to lead. He allows purpose to guide what emotion cannot interpret on its own. Emotion changes with circumstances. It is influenced by mood, environment, memory, and desire. One day emotion feels certain, the next day it feels confused. Purpose remains steady even when emotion fluctuates. You may feel unsure, tired, or distracted, yet purpose continues to nudge you in the same direction. This consistency is one of the clearest signs of divine involvement. Purpose does not depend on how you feel in a moment. It reveals itself through how you grow across seasons. Many people trust emotion because it feels real, but feeling real does not mean being reliable. Emotion can be sincere and still be misleading. It can be intense and still be temporary. Purpose is not impressed by intensity. It looks for longevity. It confirms itself not by how strongly you feel, but by how deeply it shapes you. When something is purposeful, it influences your decisions even when your emotions are quiet. It stays relevant when excitement fades. Purpose confirms what emotion cannot by revealing direction. Emotion reacts to what is happening now. Purpose points to where you are going. Emotion asks, how does this make me feel? Purpose asks, what does this make me become? When a connection, calling, or path is aligned with purpose, it draws you forward into growth. It challenges comfort and invites responsibility. Emotion often seeks relief or pleasure. Purpose seeks fulfillment through development. When God aligns purpose, He uses emotion as a signal, not a guide. Emotion alerts you that something matters. Purpose clarifies why it matters. Without purpose, emotion becomes confusing. With purpose, emotion becomes meaningful. You may feel drawn, stirred, or moved without understanding why. Purpose reveals itself through the effects of that feeling over time. You begin to see patterns of growth, refinement, and alignment emerging from what once felt like simple emotion. Purpose also confirms truth by its impact on character. Emotion may excite you, but purpose refines you. It shapes your patience, deepens your integrity, and strengthens your discernment. If something consistently draws you closer to truth, humility, and wisdom, it is purposeful. Emotion alone cannot sustain character transformation. Purpose produces fruit that remains. It makes you more grounded, not more reactive, more disciplined, not more impulsive. Emotion often demands immediate resolution. Purpose is comfortable with process. When something is driven by emotion alone, impatience increases. You want clarity now, outcomes now, answers now. Purpose teaches endurance. It allows unfolding. It understands that meaningful things are not rushed. Purpose confirms itself through timing that feels intentional, even when it feels slow. It invites trust in what is developing beneath the surface. Purpose also confirms alignment through peace, not the absence of challenge, but the presence of clarity. Emotion may bring excitement, anxiety, or fear. Purpose brings steadiness. Even when circumstances are difficult, there is an underlying sense of rightness. You may struggle, but you do not feel lost. This grounded peace is not emotional calm. It is spiritual assurance. It is the quiet confidence that comes from walking in alignment, even when emotions are unsettled. Emotion can be influenced by external validation. Compliments, attention, and approval can amplify feelings. Purpose does not require applause. It remains intact, even when unseen or misunderstood. You may pursue something purposeful without recognition, praise, or immediate reward. Emotion thrives on feedback. Purpose survives in silence. This endurance is how purpose confirms itself beyond emotion. Purpose also reveals itself through responsibility. When something is purposeful, it carries weight. You feel accountable for how you show up. You become mindful of your choices, your words, your consistency. Emotion often avoids responsibility because it seeks freedom. Purpose embraces responsibility because it understands impact. You recognize that what you are involved in matters beyond your personal satisfaction. Emotion can create attachment without direction. Purpose creates commitment with direction. Attachment clings, commitment builds. When purpose is present, you are not just emotionally invested, you are intentionally engaged. You are willing to do the work required to sustain growth. Emotion alone may retreat when challenges arise. Purpose remains engaged, seeking solutions rather than exits. Purpose confirms what emotion cannot by revealing sustainability. Emotion may burn brightly and fade quickly. Purpose burns steadily over time. It does not exhaust you, it energizes you in a deeper way. Even when tired, you remain connected. Even when discouraged, you do not disengage. Purpose replenishes rather than drains. It aligns with your values and strengths, making perseverance possible. Emotion can blur judgment. When feelings are intense, discernment weakens. Purpose sharpens discernment. It helps you see clearly, evaluate wisely, and choose intentionally. When purpose is guiding, you are less likely to compromise values for temporary satisfaction. You become more selective, more thoughtful, more grounded. Purpose provides a lens through which emotion is interpreted rather than obeyed. Purpose also confirms divine timing. Emotion often wants to move faster than wisdom allows. Purpose respects seasons. It knows when to act and when to wait. It teaches you that delay is not denial, and that preparation is part of fulfillment. Emotion resists waiting. Purpose understands that growth requires it. This patience is not passive. It is purposeful alignment with divine order. Purpose confirms what emotion cannot by revealing meaning beyond desire. Desire wants fulfillment. Purpose seeks contribution. You begin to see how this connection, calling, or path impacts others, not just yourself. You recognize that it serves something greater than personal satisfaction. Emotion asks, what do I gain? Purpose asks, what is being built? This shift in perspective is a sign of maturity and alignment. Emotion may fluctuate based on external conditions, but purpose remains rooted in internal conviction. Even when circumstances change, purpose adapts without losing direction. You may adjust methods, but the calling remains. This resilience confirms purpose beyond emotion. Emotion struggles with change, purpose navigates it. Purpose also confirms truth by its ability to coexist with sacrifice. Emotion resists sacrifice unless rewarded immediately. Purpose accepts sacrifice as part of growth. You are willing to give time, effort, patience, and sometimes comfort because you understand the value of what is being built. This willingness is not driven by emotional impulse, but by purposeful commitment. Emotion often exaggerates highs and lows. Purpose balances perspective. It helps you stay steady through success and failure. You are not defined by momentary feelings or outcomes. Purpose anchors identity. It reminds you who you are becoming, not just what you are experiencing. Purpose confirms what emotion cannot by revealing alignment with God's character. If something consistently draws you toward truth, compassion, humility, and service, it reflects divine purpose. Emotion alone can lead toward self-centeredness. Purpose expands vision beyond self. It deepens spiritual awareness and invites growth in faith. Emotion may ignite interest, but purpose sustains devotion. Interest can fade. Devotion endures. Purpose transforms fleeting feelings into enduring commitment. It turns curiosity into calling, attraction into alignment, and emotion into meaningful action. Purpose also confirms itself through clarity of conscience. When you are aligned with purpose, your conscience feels clean. Decisions feel honest. Even difficult choices bring peace. Emotion may justify compromise. Purpose resists it. This moral clarity is a sign of alignment beyond feeling. Purpose confirms what emotion cannot, because it speaks through outcomes that last. It leaves traces of growth, wisdom, and transformation. Long after the emotional intensity has passed, purpose remains evident in who you have become. It shapes your story, informs your choices, and strengthens your faith. Emotion may have initiated the journey, but purpose carries it forward, steady and intentional, guiding you through seasons of change, challenge, and fulfillment, revealing meaning where feeling alone could not interpret, grounding your steps in truth that does not depend on mood, circumstance, or momentary desire.